Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Rose Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The Michigan Wolverines basketball program has been through a lot of tumult in this offseason, but they actually finally got some really good news coming their way, and I think it is actually here to stay. Olivier Nkamhoua, the transfer portal forward from the Tennessee Volunteers, he has decided to transfer to the Michigan Wolverines. That is a big addition for Michigan because of the fact that they have had a lot of things that have not gone their way this offseason, but with Olivier Nkamhoua transferring into Michigan, at least that potentially gives Juwan Howard a shot to be competitive in the Big Ten next season, as long as Olivier Nkamhoua does end up suiting up for Michigan, which he should, but still, you just never know with Michigan. But I'm going to go over whether I think that Olivier Nkamhoua can have a big impact for Michigan next year, and where I think they potentially could stand in the Big Ten next season. Now, looking at the Michigan Wolverines basketball program, their offseason has been awful so far because they've lost Hunter Dickinson, their best player, to the transfer portal to the Kansas Jayhawks. That was an extremely tough loss. Your best player, a guy that's been the stalwart of your program for the last few years, and he is gone. And then you lose Jet Howard and Kobe Buffkin to the NBA draft. Now, obviously, that's not the worst thing in the world because those are two guys that getting drafted in the NBA is going to make Michigan look good. And Juwan Howard, having his son and another player go pro, I think that is really big for Juwan Howard to potentially keep his recruiting abilities at an all-time high at Michigan, because players want to go to the NBA, and if Michigan is a place they feel they can get the job done with Juwan Howard, who is a former NBA player and an assistant coach, then I think that that will help Michigan in the future still be able to land high-profile recruits. So even though those are both tough losses that hurt Michigan this year, that still helps the profile of the school at large. But that's not all that Michigan has lost, because Caleb Love, a guy that transferred from North Carolina to the Michigan Wolverines, never got to play for Michigan because whether it was academics or whether it was some other reason with Hunter Dickinson transferring as well, that also could have been an issue. We're not 100% sure exactly why Caleb Love left. There are definitely a lot of rumors, but he's now at Arizona. That was a big loss for Michigan because they needed Caleb Love in the backcourt. As talented as he is, he's a very flawed player, but he is a very talented player, and Michigan could have used him to help boost their chances of having success in the Big Ten next season, but he is out. That was a really tough loss for Michigan. But the well is not completely dry because Michigan does have some solid players that are returning. Doug McDaniel is a player that improved last season for Michigan. He was a guy that averaged around 9 points per game. He'll be back for the Wolverines, and he could definitely improve this next season, maybe up his points per game to double digits and become an even better facilitator for the entire team. Jalen Llewellyn, the Princeton transfer from 2 years ago, he didn't get to play for Michigan last year. That was a tough loss because he's a talented player, and he's a guy that could have followed in Mike Smith's footsteps and some other guards that Michigan has had that's transferred in. But I do think that Jalen Llewellyn will have success for Michigan if he's able to play and he'll be healthy next year. So that is a good sign for Michigan fans that he will be still in the fold for next year for the Wolverines and will finally get to play. But still, the Michigan Wolverines, not all they've brought in just besides Olivier Nkamhoua. They do have Trey Jackson, the Seton Hall transfer, coming in. He was a guy that probably would have been playing behind Hunter Dickinson at the center spot next year, but he'll probably potentially could start now at the center spot if Olivier Nkamhoua is at the power forward spot. But Trey Jackson is a guy that's not going to be able to replace Hunter Dickinson's production, but he is a solid player overall. Maybe he can up his points per game when he was at Seton Hall, which was around 6 points per game, to maybe around 8 to 10 points per game and be a really solid player for Michigan. I think Trey Jackson is a solid addition overall, and at least he's a guy that's coming from a Power 6 program, so he has a lot of experience. Nimari Burnett, he's going to have to get a waiver from the NCAA, but the NCAA is giving out waivers like free candy, so they should be okay in that regard. But if Michigan does get Nimari Burnett to be able to play for the Wolverines next year, he is a former 5-star guard who played for Alabama this past season. He is a really talented player. I think that he's a guy that could definitely step up his points per game production from 6 up to double digits as well. Michigan has a lot of high upside guys that can improve in the future. And I think that overall that does bode well for Juwan Howard because he does do a really good job with younger players and potentially being able to help them get to the NBA. But Juwan Howard, this is a very important year for him because of the fact at the beginning of his career, he was having a lot of success at Michigan, but some people are attributing that to the fact that he had a lot of John Beilen's players, and that's why he was having success. But now that all of the players are his, Michigan has started to trail downward. They're not the same program they were 2 or 3 years ago, so Michigan's going to have to find a way to get back on track, or Juwan Howard could be in a lot of trouble. But I do think that Olivier Nkamhoua is a big addition for the Michigan Wolverines. He's the best player they've got in the transfer portal so far, unless Nimari Burnett really surprises. But I do think Olivier Nkamhoua is going to be that solid for Michigan this year. He's a 6'9", 236-pound power forward, so I think he can play next to Trey Jackson in the front court. And at Tennessee last year, he averaged 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, about a half a steal and a block as well. So he's a bit versatile on the defensive end, but he's a much better offensive player. But he is a guy that's starting to step out, shoot threes. He shot 33% from the three-point line this past season. To be a guy that's 6'9", and to be able to shoot three is still a very coveted asset in today's game. I know a lot more players are doing it, but it's still not an ability that everybody can do. So Olivier Nkamhoua will be able to help out Michigan in the three-point shooting department, something they did struggle with a bit last season outside of Juwan Howard. And Olivier Nkamhoua also shot 51% from the field, so he is a very efficient two-point scorer. If you're a guy that's only shooting 33% from three, but you're shooting 51% from the field, that means you're shooting a really good percentage from inside the arc. And he only shot 70% from the free throw line, so there is room for growth there, but it does show you that Olivier Nkamhoua is not a bad free throw shooter or a bad three-point shooter. Just two things he needs to work on, especially if he wants to be able to improve and be able to go to the NBA after the season with Michigan. But I think the other big thing about Olivier Nkamhoua is a lot of the players that Michigan has coming in are young. They are freshmen and sophomores, but Olivier Nkamhoua will be a guy that's going to be a senior this year for Michigan. He is a very experienced guy, and that is something you just cannot teach in college basketball in this day and age of all this roster movement. You've got all these freshmen going pro, and then you have all the roster flux with the transfer portal. It makes for some chaos in college basketball. Fun to cover, but bad for coaches. But Olivier Nkamhoua, you just cannot teach that experience. He will be a guy that I think could be the leader for the Wolverines next year. And even if he's not the leading scorer for Michigan next year, which he very well could be, just the fact that he's an experienced guy that can do a lot of things, he's very versatile on both ends of the floor, he will be a good mismatch nightmare for some opponents in the Big Ten next season. I think that will dramatically lift up the floor for Michigan next year. Now, the Wolverines, I don't think they're going to be done in the portal. They do have one high school freshman coming in, George Washington. He's a 4-star recruit. He's a guy that I think could play as a freshman. He's a 6'2" guard. Maybe he can be a guy off the bench in the backcourt. But Michigan, they probably need a couple more players. Michigan's a little bit late to the party. They've had a lot of things not go their way, especially with the Caleb Love decommitment. But Michigan is not in the worst spot in the world right now. They are a team that probably will be in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten. But if they can get another decent transfer or two before the time is up, maybe they can be a team that's top 5 or 6 in the Big Ten. Maybe that's not where Michigan fans want to be, but it will be an improvement from last year when Michigan went to the NIT. And all you got to do is go up from here. You've got to be a better team with the high school players and transfers that you're bringing in than the players that you lost. And I'm not sure if Michigan is there because they are losing some talented players with Hunter Dickinson, Kobe Buffkin, and Juwan Howard. So maybe Michigan was more talented last year, but they might actually have better roster construction this season. And maybe they'll have a team that shares the basketball at a much higher level, and they'll be able to have more assists, and they'll have more guys that can shoot the three ball at a high level. We'll have to see if it all works out. Michigan has a lot of question marks. We definitely don't know how good Michigan's going to be next year, but they possibly could be an NCAA tournament team with Olivier Nkamhoua's addition. And if Juwan Howard can get another couple guys in the portal this late in the game, that will definitely help out the Wolverines next year, potentially have a shot to compete toward the top of the Big Ten. But at least with Olivier Nkamhoua's addition, it gives Michigan a shot to compete at all, potentially for an NCAA tournament bid. And I think that he will be a guy that will be one of the best players on Michigan's roster next season. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Olivier Nkamhoua transferring from Tennessee to Michigan. Whether you think Olivier Nkamhoua made the right decision to transfer to Michigan. How much you think he'll help out the Wolverines on their quest to make the NCAA tournament next year. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description. And I'll see you next time.